Hana checked the clock on the wall of her classroom. 5 minutes until story time. She walked around the small room, straightening the colorful cushions on the floor and making sure the picture books were within easy reach. The morning light from the station's artificial sun streamed through the wide windows, casting soft shadows across the reading corner. This was her favorite part of the day. Story time had always been special, even back on Earth when she taught human children. But here on orbital station Kepler-7, story time meant something different, something the rest of the galaxy didn't quite understand yet. The door slid open with a soft hiss. A tall figure entered, walking on 4 legs that ended in sharp claws. The Theran parent kept its head low, yellow eyes darting nervously around the room. Behind it, a smaller version of the same species padded quietly, ears flat against its head. "Teacher Hana," the parent said, its voice a deep rumble. "This is Minho. He is energetic, very strong. You must watch him carefully. Do not let him near the smaller ones. His instincts are not always controlled." Hana smiled and knelt down to Minho's level. The cub's ears perked up slightly. "Hello, Minho. I'm happy you're here. You can sit anywhere you like when we start reading." The parent's eyes widened. "Anywhere? But he'll be fine," Hana said gently. "Children usually are." The Theron parent left, still looking worried. Minho watched his parent go, then turned his large yellow eyes to Hana. She simply smiled and went back to arranging the cushions. The cub sat down near the wall, watching her with careful attention. More parents arrived. A pair of Dravik brought their 2 hatchlings, small reptilian children with beautiful green scales and tiny spines along their backs. "The spines carry venom," one parent warned. "Not much, but it can hurt. Please keep them away from others." "I'll be careful," Hana said. "Thank you for trusting me with them." The Dravik parents exchanged glances but said nothing more. Their hatchlings immediately went to explore the books, running their small clawed fingers over the colorful covers. A Kelton arrived next, barely fitting through the doorway. The massive bear-like creature had to crouch to bring its child inside. Little Jiho looked up at Hana with wide, curious eyes. "Strong," the parent grunted. "Very strong. Can hurt without meaning to. Must be separate. Jiho can choose where to sit," Hana said. "I trust him to be gentle." The Kelton parent made a sound that might have been doubt but left its child anyway. Every parent who came through that door had the same worried look. Every parent had been turned away from other classrooms on the station. Their children were considered too dangerous, too unpredictable, too much like the predators their species had evolved from. But Hana had grown up with dogs and cats on Earth. She had bottle-fed orphaned fox cubs and helped her neighbor care for a rescued wolf. She knew something that the galaxy seemed to have forgotten. Predators were only dangerous when they were afraid or cornered. Give them safety, and they became something else entirely. The last parent to arrive was Ambassador Tala. The Valorian's insect-like body moved with sharp, precise motions. Her large compound eyes reflected the light in rainbow patterns. Behind her, trying to hide, was a small form with similar features. "This is Quito," Tala said, her voice clicking slightly with each word. "I must be honest with you, Teacher Hana. Quito has been rejected from every other program on this station. His mandibles are sharp. His instincts are to strike first. I do not know if even you can handle him." Hana looked down at Quito. The young Valorian was trembling slightly, his small mandibles tucked close to his body. His eyes, so different from human eyes, still managed to show fear. "Hello, Quito," Hana said softly. "Would you like to hear a story about Earth animals? I have a book about butterflies. They're insects from my planet. I think you might like them." Quito's antennae perked up slightly. Tala stared at Hana for a long moment, then sighed. "I will return in 2 hours, please. Be careful." When all the parents had gone, Hana settled into her reading chair. 6 children sat scattered around the room, each keeping their distance from the others. Each one had been taught that they were dangerous. Each one had learned to be afraid of their own nature. "All right," Hana said, picking up a large picture book. "Today we're going to read about animals from Earth. This story is about a lion and a mouse who became friends." She began to read, her voice calm and steady. The children listened, but they stayed where they were, pressed against the walls, maintaining their safe distances. Outside the classroom, Commander Junho walked down the corridor. He had made it his habit to check on Hana at least once a day. As the human military liaison on the station, He felt responsible for the few humans who lived here, especially ones who insisted on doing things that seemed absolutely insane to the rest of the galaxy. He stopped at the observation window, the one-way glass that let him see into the classroom without disturbing the lesson. What he saw made his blood run cold. Keto had moved. The small Valorian was no longer against the wall. He had crept forward, drawn by Hannah's gentle voice and the colorful pictures in the book. Now he was climbing onto her lap, his sharp mandibles clicking softly, positioned mere inches from Hannah's throat. Junho's hand flew to the emergency alarm on the wall. One press and security would flood the room. But then he noticed something that made him freeze. Hannah hadn't stopped reading. She hadn't even tensed. She simply adjusted her position slightly to make room for Keto, turned the page, and continued the story. Her voice never wavered. Her breathing stayed calm. Keto's mandibles, those weapons that had terrified every adult who met him, were clicking in a slow, rhythmic pattern. Junho had studied enough xenobiology to recognize it. The young Valorian was purring. He was content. Movement caught Junho's eye. Minho the Theron cub was inching forward. His parents had warned that he was aggressive, that his predatory instincts were too strong. But right now those yellow eyes were fixed on the picture book, and his ears were forward with interest. Minho reached Hannah's side and settled down next to her chair. One of the Dravik hatchlings followed, then the other. Little Jiho lumbered over, his massive form surprisingly graceful as he found a spot near Hannah's feet. Within minutes, every single child in the room had gathered around Hannah. A pile of scales. Fur chitin and claws surrounded the human teacher. Any one of these children could hurt her. Together they could kill her in seconds, but they didn't. They just listened to the story. Hannah turned another page. And so the lion learned that even the smallest friend can be the most important one, she read. Keto's mandibles clicked happily. One of the Dravik hatchlings reached out to touch the picture with a careful claw. Junho stood at the window, his hand still hovering over the alarm. Slowly he lowered it. He pulled out his communication device and sent a message to his office. It simply said, "You need to see this." Hannah finished the story and closed the book. "Would you like to hear another one?" she asked. The children made various sounds of agreement. Keto clicked his mandibles. Minho made a soft chuffing noise. The Dravik hatchlings chirped. Jiho rumbled deep in his chest. "All right," Hannah said, reaching for another book. "This one is about wolves. They're pack animals from Earth. They take care of each other." As she began to read, Junho finally understood what he was witnessing. These children weren't being made soft or weak. They were learning something that their own species had forgotten in their rush to reach the stars. They were learning that being strong didn't mean being alone, that predators could be protectors, that claws and teeth could be gentle when they chose to be. Humanity had figured this out thousands of years ago, when the first human offered food to a wild wolf. When ancient people had watched cats hunt mice and thought, friend instead of danger. The galaxy had evolved past that instinct. They had become so focused on survival that they had forgotten how to simply live together. But Hannah remembered. And now, she was teaching the children to remember too. Junho watched as she turned another page, as Keto shifted to get more comfortable on her lap, as Minho rested his large head on her knee. He watched predator cubs from 6 different species that had fought wars against each other, sitting together in peace. And he realized that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was this: the simple, terrifying ability to look at something dangerous and see a friend. The story continued. The children listened, and in that small classroom on orbital station Kepler 7, something changed. Something that would ripple out across the galaxy in ways that no one could predict yet. It started with a human teacher who just kept reading. Even when predator cubs climbed onto her lap, like it was the most natural thing in the world. The video spread through the station faster than anyone expected. Someone had recorded Commander Junho's observation session through the classroom window. Within hours, every species representative on Kepler 7 had seen it. The human teacher surrounded by predator cubs, children who had been rejected from every other program, sitting together peacefully. The Interspecies Council called an emergency meeting 3 days later. Hannah sat in a chair that was too large for her, designed for beings much bigger than humans. Around her, the council members filled their seats. Thorons, Valorians, Draviks, Keltons, and a dozen other species. All of them were staring at her. Teacher Hana, Council Member Vin began. The massive Thoron's voice rumbled through the chamber. We have concerns about your methods. You allow dangerous children to touch you, to be near each other. This is reckless. Are they dangerous? Hana asked quietly. Or are they just children? Vin's ears flattened. My grandson Minho has the strength to break bones. His claws can tear flesh. These are facts. Yes, Hana agreed. And he chooses not to use that strength to hurt. That's also a fact. Ambassador Tala leaned forward. Her compound eyes caught the light. Teacher Hana, I must admit something. When I first brought Quito to you, I expected to receive a call within minutes. I expected him to hurt someone or to be hurt. But instead, she paused. Instead, he comes home happy. He tells me about the stories, about his friends. Friends? Another council member spoke up, a Dravik with dark green scales. Valorian children do not make friends. They compete. They establish dominance. This is our nature. Maybe, Hana said, that's because they're taught to compete. What if you taught them something else? The chamber erupted. Council members argued with each other in multiple languages. Some were angry. Some were curious. All of them were unsettled. Council member Vin raised his massive paw and the room fell silent. I propose we observe Teacher Hana's methods directly. Let us see for ourselves what happens in this classroom. Hana nodded. You're welcome to watch. But I have two rules. You must be silent and you must stay still. The children are learning to feel safe. Loud noises or sudden movements will frighten them. Several council members bristled at the idea of being told what to do by a human. Vin stared at Hana for a long moment. Very well. We will follow your rules. The observation was scheduled for the next day. Hana arrived early to prepare the classroom. She knew this would be different. The children would sense the watchers. They would feel the tension. The parents brought their children as usual. Minho bounded in, excited to show Hana a drawing he had made. Quito clicked his mandibles in greeting. The Dravik hatchlings chirped happily. Little Jiho rumbled a hello. But when they saw the council members filing into the observation area, the children froze. Their joy vanished. Minho's ears went flat. Quito's mandibles tucked close to his body. The hatchlings huddled together. Hana sat in her reading chair and picked up a book. She didn't acknowledge the observers. She simply began to read, her voice soft and steady. Today's story is about elephants, she said. They're huge animals from Earth, even bigger than Keltons. But do you know what's special about elephants? The children didn't respond. They stayed pressed against the walls, watching the observation window with fearful eyes. Hana continued as if nothing was wrong. Elephants live in families. The whole family protects the babies. The older elephants teach the young ones. They remember their friends forever. She turned a page showing a picture of an elephant family gathered around a watering hole. See how they stand together? That's because they feel safe together. Slowly, Quito began to move. His steps were hesitant, but he crept toward Hana. In the observation area, council member Vin tensed. His grandson Minho was still against the wall, trembling slightly. Quito reached Hana and climbed onto her lap. His mandibles clicked softly. Hana adjusted her position and kept reading. Elephants never forget their friends. Even if they don't see each other for many years, they remember. One of the Dravik hatchlings moved next, then the other. They settled near Hana's feet, their small spines rattling gently. But Minho stayed against the wall. His yellow eyes darted between Hana and the observation window where his grandfather watched. Vin saw the fear in his grandson's eyes. He saw how Minho wanted to join the others but was too afraid. And suddenly Vin understood something terrible. His grandson wasn't afraid of Hana or the other children. He was afraid of disappointing his family, afraid of being the aggressive, dangerous thing everyone expected him to be. Dr. Yunji, a human xenopsychologist, stood beside Vin. She had been studying Hana's methods for weeks. Do you see it? She whispered. He wants to be gentle, but he thinks you won't accept him if he is. Vin's claws clenched. His species had survived by being fierce, by teaching their young to be strong, to dominate, to never show weakness. But what if they had taught their children to be afraid of their own gentleness? Hana looked up from her book. She met Minho's eyes across the room. Minho, would you like to see the next picture? It shows a baby elephant. The cub took one step forward, then another. His gaze kept flicking to the observation window. To his grandfather, Vin made a decision. He stood up, breaking the silence rule, and placed his massive paw against the observation window. It was a gesture from his species, a sign of approval. Of acceptance, Minho's ears perked up. He bounded across the room and settled next to Hana, pressing close to her side. His tail wagged slightly. Hana smiled and showed him the picture. See the baby? The whole family protects it. That's what families do. They keep each other safe. Jiho finally moved, his large form joining the group. All the children were together now, listening to the story about elephants who remembered their friends forever. In the observation area, the council members were silent. They watched as the children leaned against each other, as Kito's mandibles clicked in contentment as Minho's eyes closed in peace. Dr. Yunji pulled up data on her tablet. I've been analyzing childhood development across 20 species, she said quietly. Humans aren't unique in our capacity for gentleness. Every species shows these behaviors in their young. But most species teach it away. They separate different species early. They emphasize competition over cooperation. Why? Ambassador Thaler asked. Why would we do that? Survival, Dr. Yunji said. At least that's what you thought. But humans survive differently. We made friends with wolves. We domesticated cats. We kept animals that could kill us, and we turned them into family. We never forgot that predators could be protectors. Finn stared through the window at his grandson. Minho was showing something to Kito, the two of them chittering and clicking at each other. A Theron and a Valorian, species that had fought wars, playing together like it was the most natural thing in the world. We thought we were making them strong, Vin said slowly. We thought fear would keep them safe. Fear makes them careful, Dr. Yunji replied. But it also makes them alone. Humans learned that the safest thing isn't to be the strongest, it's to have the strongest friends. The observation session ended. The council members filed out in silence. They had come to judge Hana's methods. Instead, they had been forced to judge themselves. The council voted that evening. The decision was close, but Hana was allowed to continue her program. However, the vote came with a warning. If any child was hurt, the program would end immediately. Commander Junho met with Hana after the vote. You know there are people who don't like this, he said. Some Valorians think you're making their children weak. They believe humans are corrupting their young. Hana nodded. I know. But I can't teach the children to be afraid just because adults are uncomfortable. That would make me part of the problem. I'm increasing security around your classroom, Junho said. Just in case. Thank you, Hana said. Then she smiled. But I think the best security I have is sitting in that classroom. 6 little predators who've learned that protecting each other is more important than competing. Junho thought about that as he walked away. She was right, of course. Those children would protect her with everything they had. They had learned it from her, just like human children had learned to be gentle from their parents who kept wolves as pets. The galaxy was changing. It was changing in a small classroom, one story at a time, and there were those who would do anything to stop that change. But for now, Hana had won. The children could keep learning, keep playing, keep discovering that being different didn't mean being enemies. Tomorrow she would read them a story about dolphins, about how they saved drowning swimmers and played with human children in the ocean, about another Earth predator that chose to be a friend. The galaxy had forgotten these lessons, but Hana would teach them again, one child at a time. The door burst open with a crash that made everyone jump. Hana looked up from the storybook to see a Valorian standing in the doorway. But this wasn't a parent dropping off a child. This Valorian's mandibles were spread wide in an aggressive display, and his whole body vibrated with anger. Enough, the Valorian shouted. His voice was harsh and clicking. I am Operative Dury, and I am here to stop this corruption. These children are being made weak, soft. They are learning prey behavior from a prey species. The children scattered in fear. Minho pressed himself against the wall, ears flat. The Dravik hatchlings darted behind a bookshelf. Jiho backed into a corner, making himself as small as his large body could manage. But Kito didn't run. He stood frozen on Hana's lap, his small body trembling. Operative Dury was from his own species. This was what a proper Valorian adult looked like. Aggressive, dominant, ready to fight. Hana didn't stand up. She didn't raise her voice. She simply sat in her reading chair with Kito on her lap and looked at Operative Dury calmly. You're frightening the children? she said quietly. Good, Dury snapped. They should be frightened. Fear keeps you alive. Fear makes you strong. You are teaching them to ignore their instincts. No, Hana said. I'm teaching them to understand their instincts. To know when to use them and when to choose something else. Something moved. Minho had taken a step away from the wall. His yellow eyes were fixed on Dury, and his ears were no longer flat. They were forward, alert. You are making them prey. Dury's mandibles clacked dangerously. Kido, come here. I am taking you away from this. Your parents will thank me. Kido's mandibles clicked rapidly. It was a sound of distress. His small claws gripped Hana's shirt. Minho took another step forward. The Dravik hatchlings emerged from behind the bookshelf. Jiho moved out of his corner. Slowly, the children were positioning themselves between Hana and the threat. Operative Dury saw what was happening. His mandibles spread wider. You see? They protect the human. They should protect their own kind. This is exactly the corruption I speak of. They're protecting their family, Hana said. Her voice was still calm, but there was steel in it now. That's what you don't understand. Kido isn't protecting me because I'm human. He's protecting me because I'm his teacher, his friend, his pack. Pack? Dury laughed, but it sounded harsh. Valorians don't have packs. We have territories. We have dominance hierarchies. We survive alone, Minho growled. It was a low, warning sound. He was now standing directly in front of Hana, and his claws were extended. The gentle cub who loved story time was gone. In his place was a young Theron predator protecting what was his, but Minho didn't attack. None of the children attacked. They simply stood their ground, making it clear that to reach Hana, Dury would have to go through them all. Hana gently stroked Kido's back. The small Valorian's trembling was slowing. Operative Dury, she said, can I ask you something? The operative's mandibles clicked in irritation. What? When was the last time you felt safe enough to rest? The question seemed to hit Dury like a physical blow. His aggressive stance faltered. What? Safe enough to rest, Hana repeated. Not just sleep, but actually rest. When did you last feel like you didn't have to watch for threats? When you didn't have to maintain your territory or prove your strength? Dury stared at her. His mandibles slowly closed. That is not. You've never felt that, Hana said gently. Have you? You've lived your entire life ready to fight, ready to defend, ready to attack if necessary. You've never known what it's like to be safe. The operative's legs seemed to weaken. He took a step back. That is survival. That is how we live. Is it living? Hana asked. Or is it just not dying? Kido climbed down from Hana's lap. Slowly, carefully, he approached Operative Dury. The adult Valorian watched the cub with confusion. Kido. No, Dury said, but his voice had lost its anger. Stay back. I am dangerous, Hana said. Kido is dangerous too. He has sharp mandibles and strong instincts. But he chooses to be gentle. That's not weakness. That's strength. Kido reached Dury and made a soft clicking sound. It was the sound young Valorians made when seeking comfort. A sound that most adults had forgotten how to make. Dury's legs gave out completely. He collapsed onto the floor, sitting heavily. I don't understand, he said, and his voice was different now, quieter, almost lost. I came here to save him. To save all of them. From weakness. They're not weak, Hana said. Look at them. They stood up to you. They protected me. But they didn't attack you. They showed you that they could choose. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. The classroom door slid open again. This time it was security led by Commander Junho. They rushed in with weapons ready, but they stopped when they saw the scene. The aggressive operative sitting on the floor, a small cub clicking softly at him, the human teacher still in her reading chair. Stand down, Junho ordered his team. He walked forward carefully. Operative Dury, you're under arrest for threatening a civilian and endangering children. Dury didn't resist. He allowed himself to be helped to his feet. But before he was led away, he looked at Hana. How? He asked. How do they do it? How do they feel safe? Hana smiled. They trust each other. They know that if one of them is in danger, the others will help. They don't have to be strong alone. They can be strong together. Together, Dury repeated. He looked at the children who were now returning to their spots around the room. Minho's ears were up again. The Dravik hatchlings were chirping softly. Jiho rumbled contentedly. We forgot that, didn't we? My species, my people. We forgot how to be together. It's not too late to remember, Hana said. As security led Duri away, he was quiet, but his mandibles weren't spread in aggression anymore. They were held in a different position, one that Valorians used when they were thinking deeply. Commander Junho stayed behind. Are you okay? He asked Hana. I'm fine, she said. Are the children okay? Hunyo looked around the room. The children had already returned to their normal activities. Minho was showing a book to Kito. The Dravik hatchlings were playing a quiet game. Jiho was examining a toy. They seem fine. Better than fine, actually. What they did, standing up to protect you, they were protecting their pack, Hana said. That's what families do. A pack of different species, Junho said softly. A Theran, 2 Draviks, a Kelton, and a Valorian. Protecting a human. This should be impossible. It's only impossible if you think being different means being enemies, Hana said. She picked up her book again. Now, if you'll excuse me, we were in the middle of a story about wolves. The children want to know what happens next. Junho left, shaking his head in wonder. The children gathered around Hana again, settling into their favorite spots. Kito climbed back onto her lap. Minho leaned against her knee. The others arranged themselves in a comfortable circle. Where were we? Hana asked, finding the right page. Oh yes. The wolf pack was teaching their cubs how to hunt together. She continued reading, her voice calm and steady, as if a dangerous operative hadn't just burst into her classroom. As if her students hadn't just formed a protective barrier around her. As if the galaxy hadn't just witnessed something it had thought impossible. Later that day, Operative Duri requested to speak with Dr. Yunji. In his holding cell, he asked her one question. If our children can feel safe with a human, why can't we feel safe with each other? Dr. Yunji didn't have an easy answer, but she promised to try to find one. The news of the incident spread through the station and beyond. Some people were angry that Hana had been threatened. Others were amazed that children from predator species had protected her without violence. But everyone agreed on one thing. Something was changing. Something fundamental about how the galaxy understood strength, safety, and what it meant to be a predator. And it all started in a small classroom, with a human teacher who kept reading stories about Earth animals. Animals that had learned, thousands of years ago, that the strongest wolves were the ones who ran together in packs. The children were learning that lesson now, and maybe, just maybe, their parents would learn it too. The message came through on every communication channel in the galaxy. Video footage of the incident. Children from predator species protecting a human teacher. Operative Duri sitting on the floor, asking when he had last felt safe. Within days, the story had reached planets that humans had never even visited. Requests flooded into Kepler 7 station. Other stations wanted human teachers. Planets asked for xenopsychologists like Dr. Yunji. Parents from across the galaxy sent messages asking if their children could join Hana's program. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. For the first time in recorded history, they formally recognized a non-military, non-technological human contribution to galactic society. They called it the human method, a way of teaching children across species to cooperate instead of compete. Hana sat in her small apartment on the station, reading the official documents. They wanted her to be the director of a new interspecies education initiative. They wanted her to train teachers, to create a curriculum, to standardize her approach so it could be taught across hundreds of worlds. She put the documents down and looked out her window at the stars. You're not sure, Commander Junho said. He sat across from her, a cup of tea cooling in his hands. I didn't create a method, Hana said quietly. I just treated children like children. I didn't invent compassion. I just didn't forget it. But you could teach others to do the same, Junho said, could I? Hana turned to face him. Or would I be teaching them to follow a system? To check boxes? To measure success by data points? That's not what the children need. They need people who actually care. Junho was quiet for a long moment. You're afraid they'll turn kindness into bureaucracy? Yes, Hana said. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. Junho set down his tea. Can I tell you something? About why I check on you every day? Hana nodded. I was part of the first contact team, Junho said. 80 years ago, when humans first met the Therans, it went badly. We were afraid of them. They were afraid of us. People died on both sides. And I killed someone, a Theron. He was charging at me and I thought he was going to attack. But he wasn't. He was trying to protect his cub who had wandered into our camp. Hana reached across the table and took his hand. I've carried that for decades. Junho continued. The knowledge that I killed a father who was just trying to protect his child. And then I watched you. I watched Minho climb onto your lap. I watched his grandfather realize that everything he thought about strength was wrong. And I realized something. What? Hana asked softly. That maybe it's not too late. Maybe we can fix what we broke, not by pretending it didn't happen, but by making sure the next generation doesn't repeat our mistakes. Junho met her eyes. That's worth fighting for. Even if it means dealing with bureaucracy. Hana was quiet, thinking. Outside her window, the station's artificial lights mimicked a sunset. On hundreds of planets across the galaxy, real suns were setting. And on many of those planets, parents were tucking their children into bed, wondering if there was a better way. I'll do it, Hana said finally, but on my terms. I won't create a rigid system. I'll train teachers, but I'll teach them to think, not to follow steps. And I'll make sure that the children always come first, Junho smiled. I wouldn't expect anything less. The changes started small. Hana trained 5 teachers. 2 humans, a Theron, a Kelton, and surprisingly a reformed Valorian. Not Operative Dury, though he asked. Instead, it was a young Valorian named Nari, who had grown up during the wars and wanted something different for the next generation. Each teacher opened a classroom on different stations. The programs were small at first. A handful of children, parents who were brave enough to try something new, but word spread. Parents saw their children coming home happy instead of stressed. They saw friendships forming across species lines. They saw their aggressive, dangerous cubs learning to be gentle when gentleness was needed, and fierce when protection was required. Something else started happening too. The parents began to talk to each other. A Theron mother and a Valorian father waiting outside the classroom discovered they had similar concerns about their children. They started meeting for meals, comparing notes, supporting each other. Friendships formed, not just between the children but between their families. Species that had been historical enemies found themselves sitting together at dinner tables, watching their cubs play. Minho's friendship with Keto became famous across the galaxy. The Theron cub and the Valorian cub who had met in Hana's classroom were now inseparable. Their families had started hosting interspecies gatherings. Other families joined. What started as a few parents became a community. Elder Nari, the ancient Kelton who remembered the wars before the Galactic Council existed, attended one of these gatherings. She watched her great-grandson Jiho playing with children from 6 different species. She watched them share food, tell jokes, and help each other with simple tasks. This is what we lost, she said to Dr. Yunji, who was collecting research data at the event. We used to be like this. Before the wars. Before we learned to see each other as threats. Dr. Yunji nodded. My research confirms it. Every species shows cooperative behavior in early development. But most civilizations systematically teach it away. They emphasize competition, territory, dominance. They prepare children for war instead of peace. Why didn't humans do that? Nari asked. We did, Dr. Yunji admitted, many times in our history. But we also kept doing something else. We kept making friends with animals. We domesticated wolves and turned them into dogs. We invited cats into our homes. We kept horses, raised birds, played with dolphins. We never forgot that predators could be companions. And that made you different, Nari said. That's why Teacher Hana can sit calmly while Keto's mandibles are near her throat. Because humans never stop trusting predators. Not just trusting, Dr. Yunji said. Loving. Humans love their dogs. Their cats. We cry when they die. We consider them family. That's the part the galaxy forgot. You can't just cooperate with someone. You have to care about them. Nari watched the children play. And that's what these cubs are learning. Not just to cooperate, but to care. 6 months after Hana accepted the director position, her students created something. They had been working on it secretly during free time. When they presented it to her, she almost cried. It was a piece of art. Each child had contributed something from their own culture. Theron claw marks arranged in traditional family patterns, Valorian mandible designs that represented unity, Dravic scale paintings showing cooperation, Kelton stone carvings of protection, And in the center, woven together, was a human symbol. A circle, simple and complete. It's our family, Minho explained, his tail wagging. All of us together. We made it for you, Keto added, his mandibles clicking softly. Because you taught us that we could be a family, even though we're different. The parents who had gathered for the presentation stood in silence. Some of them were crying. All of them were realizing the same thing. The children had solved the problem. They had figured out what the adults had been debating for months. Different didn't mean enemy. Different just meant different. And different people could still be family. Ambassador Tala stepped forward. The council wants to expand the program, she said to Hana. 50 new stations. Hundreds of teachers. Thousands of children. Hana looked at the artwork, at the symbols of different species woven together, at the children who had created it standing together with pride. Tell the council yes, she said. But tell them one more thing. What? Tala asked. Tell them that every teacher needs to understand one thing. This isn't about making children less dangerous. It's about teaching them that they can choose when to use their strength. That being capable of protecting someone is what makes protection meaningful. Hana smiled at the children. These cubs aren't weak. They're the strongest students I've ever taught. Because they know when to be fierce and when to be gentle. The children beamed at her praise, and in that moment, watching predator cubs from across the galaxy stand together in friendship, everyone in the room understood what humans had known for thousands of years. The strongest pack wasn't the one that fought alone. It was the one that fought together. And that lesson was about to spread across every star system in the galaxy. 10 years had passed since that first day when Keto climbed onto Hana's lap. The small cub was now a young adult, tall and confident. His mandibles had grown sharp and strong, but he had never used them to hurt anyone. He chose not to. Minho walked beside Keto through the corridors of the Advanced Academy on Kepler 7. The Theron had grown massive, his yellow eyes bright with intelligence, his claws retracted as he carried his study materials. Other students passed them in the hallway. Therans, Valorians, Dravix, Keltons, humans, and dozens of other species, all walking together, all heading to classes. Remember when we were scared of each other? Keto asked, his mandibles clicking in amusement. Minho's ears perked forward. Barely. I remember being scared of Teacher Hana more. Why? Keto asked. She's tiny and gentle. Exactly, Minho said. She was so different from what I expected. My parents told me humans were dangerous, that they survived by being clever and ruthless. But Teacher Hana just sat there and read stories. Even when I could have hurt her, even when you climbed on her lap with your mandibles right near her throat, she just kept reading. That's why she was scary. Keto's mandibles clicked faster, a sign of laughter. Yes, Minho said seriously, because she trusted us before we even trusted ourselves. That takes a kind of bravery I didn't understand back then. They reached their shared quarters. Like many students at the academy, they had chosen to room together. A Theron and a Valorian sharing living space would have been unthinkable a generation ago. Now it was normal. The Galactic Council wants us to speak tomorrow, Keto said, settling onto his sleeping platform, about growing up in the program. I know, Minho replied. What should we tell them? The truth, Keto said. That we never thought of each other as different species. We were just friends who liked the same stories. The next day, Hana returned to Kepler 7 for the first time in months. She had been traveling constantly, setting up new programs, training new teachers, helping establish interspecies education centers on dozens of worlds. She was tired but happy. Commander Junho met her at the docking bay. He had retired from military service years ago, and now worked with Dr. Yunji, helping veterans across species process their trauma and learn new ways of thinking. You look exhausted, Junho said, taking her bag. I am, Hana admitted, but it's worth it. Every new classroom, every child who learns that different doesn't mean dangerous, it's all worth it. The council presentation is in an hour, Junho said. Minho and Keto are already there. They're nervous, and they'll do fine, Hana said. They always do. The council chamber was packed. Representatives from every member species had come to hear the testimony of the first generation raised with the human method. Historians were calling this moment the beginning of the Second Contact era, a time defined not by treaties or trade agreements, but by children who saw playmates instead of predators. Minho and Keto stood at the center of the chamber. They looked nervous, but they stood together, drawing strength from each other's presence. Council member Vin, much older now but still imposing, addressed them. You have been asked here to tell us about your experience growing up in the interspecies education program. The council wishes to understand how this has affected your development. Please begin. Minho and Kido looked at each other. They had prepared speeches, data, examples. But standing there looking at all the serious adult faces, they realized that wasn't what was needed. We're best friends, Kido said simply. That's what the program did for us. It let us become best friends. My species and Kido's species fought wars, Minho added. For generations, Therans and Valorians killed each other over territory and resources. But when we met, we were just two cubs in a classroom. And teacher Hana read us a story about a lion and a mouse who became friends. We didn't know we were supposed to be enemies, Kido said. No one told us to hate each other. They just told us stories. Stories about animals from Earth who helped each other, who lived together, who formed families that included different species. And we thought, if Earth animals can do that, why can't we? Minho's tail swished thoughtfully. So we did. We became friends. And then we became family. A council member from a distant system raised their appendage. But surely you must have experienced challenges. Moments when your species' differences caused conflict. Of course, Kido said. Minho likes to sleep in darkness. My species needs light. He prefers cool temperatures. I need warmth. His food smells terrible to me. My food looks disgusting to him. So we compromised, Minho continued. We got adjustable lighting. We set the temperature to something we could both tolerate. We learned to eat our meals separately or to choose foods we both liked. These aren't conflicts. They're just differences. You work through them because you care about the person. Ambassador Tala stood. She was older now, her movements slower, but her voice was still strong. My nephew Kido used to be rejected from every program on this station. He was considered dangerous, uncontrollable, a threat to other children. But teacher Hana saw something else. What did she see, Kido? Kido's mandibles clicked softly, the way they did when he was emotional. She saw a scared cub who wanted friends. She saw someone who needed to feel safe before he could be gentle. She saw me. Not what everyone expected me to be. Just me. The chamber was silent. Many of the council members had children or grandchildren in the new programs. They had seen the changes. But hearing it from Minho and Kido made it real in a way that data never could. What do you want for the future? Council member Vin asked his grandson. The same thing every generation wants, Minho said. We want to be better than you were. No offense, grandfather. Vin's ears perked forward, the Theron equivalent of a smile. None taken. Please continue. You grew up in a galaxy where different species were always potential threats, Kido said, where children were taught to be wary, to compete to establish dominance, and maybe that was necessary once. Maybe that's how you survived. But we're growing up in a different galaxy, Minho continued, one where we have friends from dozens of species, where we know that being strong doesn't mean being alone, where we understand that the best protection comes from having people who care about you. We want every child to grow up the way we did, Kido said, knowing that they can be fierce when they need to be, but also gentle, knowing that having claws or mandibles or strength doesn't mean you have to use them, knowing that you can choose. That's what teacher Hana taught us, Minho said, not to be less dangerous, but to have the wisdom to choose when to use our strength. The council members looked at each other. Some were nodding. Others were thinking deeply. All of them were realizing that these young people weren't asking for permission. They were informing the adults of how things were going to be. After the presentation, Hana found her old classroom. It had been converted into a training center, but someone had kept her reading chair. She sat in it now, running her hand over the worn armrests. A new teacher was using the room now. A Dravik named Suman, one of the first non-humans Hana had trained. She came in with a group of young children, various species all chattering excitedly. Teacher Hana! Suman's scales brightened with pleasure. I didn't know you were visiting. Children, this is the teacher who started our program. The children gathered around Hana, their eyes wide. She smiled at them. They were so young, so full of possibility. Will you read us a story? A small Kelton cub asked shyly. Hana looked at Suman, who nodded. Of course, Hana said. What would you like to hear about? Wolves! Several voices called out at once. Hana laughed. Wolves it is. She picked up a book from the shelf, one of the original Earth animal books she had brought 10 years ago. The children settled around her, some on the floor, some leaning against her chair. A Valorian cub reminding her so much of young Quito climbed onto her lap. His mandibles clicked softly. Hana adjusted her position to make him comfortable and began to read. Long ago on Earth, there were animals called wolves. They were predators, fierce and strong, but they learned something important. They learned that hunting together was better than hunting alone. They formed packs, and in those packs they took care of each other. Commander Junho watched through the observation window. Dr. Yunji stood beside him, taking notes for her latest research paper. It's still amazing, Junho said quietly. After all these years watching her do this, it never stops being amazing. Humans domesticated wolves 20,000 years ago, Dr. Yunji said. They turned the most dangerous predators on their planet into their best friends. That's humanity's true gift to the galaxy. Not technology, not weapons. The knowledge that anything can be family if you give it the chance. Inside the classroom, Hana turned a page. The predator cub on her lap purred contentedly. The other children leaned in closer, eager to hear what happened next in the story. And the wolves lived together in their packs, Hana read. Protecting each other, hunting together, raising their cubs as a family. Because they understood something important. Being strong alone is good, but being strong together is better. The children listened, their eyes bright with interest. They didn't know that they were part of a revolution. They didn't know that historians would study this moment, this program, this simple act of reading stories together. They just knew that story time was their favorite part of the day, that their friends were from different species, but that didn't matter. That their teacher, whether human or Dravik or Theron or any other species, cared about them, and that was enough. 20 years after Quito first climbed onto Hana's lap, the galaxy had changed. Not through war or treaties or technological advancement, but through children who learned that being different was interesting, not dangerous, that predators could be protectors. That strength was choosing when to use your claws, not using them all the time. The galaxy learned what humans had known since they first offered food to a wild wolf. That friendship was stronger than fear. That family could be anyone you chose to love. That the most dangerous predator could become the most loyal companion. All because one human teacher had kept reading stories, even when predator cubs climbed onto her lap, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because to her it was.